Ish. Okay, so this is probably going to be the first sort of video on this channel. It's going to be very informal. I'm not much of a formal person at all, but I thought I'd do a review on my Nestof M37 Schnurrschuhe ankle boots, whatever you want to call them. So I got these at the start of 2025 roughly. I think I got them end of January. The shipping was really fast compared to other European vendors that I've ordered from, like Soldier of Fortune, even Schuster's. Nestof by far has been the fastest that have actually shipped to South Africa, which, by the way, I'm South African, woohoo. Anyway, so to start off, I have heard a lot of bad reviews about the Nestof ankle boots, especially the soles coming undone and whatnot, especially like around the half sole region where it sort of peels up. I've also heard of people where the whole entire sole falls off. Same with the heels. I've heard a lot of people losing a lot of hobnails. So when I ordered these, it was sort of a shot in the dark because I didn't have the money at the time for like Frederici's and whatnot, and I was a bit wary of companies like Chronicle Militaria, which I have heard good reviews. If you're looking for cheap boots that'll come relatively fast, check out Chronicle Militaria. But anyway, main focus on this is the Nestofs. So when I got these, I obviously treated them and whatnot with sort of the products in the backyard. I don't know if you can see it, but sort of things like neat foot oil for the uppers, linseed oil for the soles, and then sort of like this, Dale's Dubbin is sort of a wax. And I treated these quite a lot when I got them, just to get the leather supple and whatnot, because here in South Africa things are quite dry and leather goes funny rather quickly. Not funny as in a humorous way, but anyway. So when I actually first used these, it was sort of a trial by fire. We had a basically 3-day immersion event where you do about a 5-kilometer hike in. You obviously do your activities over the weekend and a 5K out. Now, these specifically, I was very wary because of the previous bad reviews. But when I actually sort of started using them, they became more and more comfortable and more I had more faith in them per se. So it sort of it surprised me in a way from when I actually started using them more and more during that event, because I did bring a pair of backup boots which are quite fob to say the least, but it was sort of backup if all else fails. But anyways, so sort of to trial these properly, during that immersion event, I basically took every patrol I could, flipping stepped over every stick and rock that looked dangerous to a pair of boots, and these have held up really well. And I mean, especially the sole construction is what impressed me. I mean, I haven't lost a single hobnail or anything. My only gripe per se with the soles is on this side, the leather on the heel bit has worn down slightly, especially around here where it's compressed quite a lot. But it's not the end of the world. I've dabbled in a bit of cobbling classes and whatnot. It's a rather easy fix if you know what you're doing. But another thing I would say is don't be like me and dye these halfway through owning them. If you want them to be black from the start, dye them first. Because what I did is, when I got these, I wanted them to originally be brown because I was reenacting mostly late war. And then I'd say about 2 or 3 months ago, I was like, hold on, maybe I should start dabbling in early war again. And that's when I darkened these, but I used a rather cheap dye. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but especially around the heels, the dye has started to wear off again. But yeah, it's not really Nestof's fault, it's more my fault. But anyways, so one of the more alarming things that people say with Nestof's boots is that the soles are just glued on, etc., etc. And thought I'd prove that wrong with their newest runs. So I usually wear inner soles with boots. I don't know about you, but I've got rather weird feet. But if the camera can pick this up, I think you can see that these are stitched and properly nailed. My only gripe about the Nestofs is that the footbed sort of inner sole is made of, which is essentially known as leatherboard, which is sort of leather fibers that are ground up and then basically made into new sheets with a sort of substance of glue or whatever it is that they use. Don't get me wrong, it's okay for most boots, but for like daily wear, they're kind of crap. But for reenactment boots that you wear, you know, maybe once a month, it's not going to harm you. Now, one of the things that I changed with these per se, other than dyeing them, you know, a few months ago, is I changed out the leather laces that I got with them. And these leather laces, when I got them, were basically rock hard. I literally filled a whole tub of Nestof oil and just left these in for like a solid week. And they've become quite flexible, and, you know, I mean, you can get to positions like this, and they're quite strong, I must be honest. The leather laces that Nestof supplies with their boots are quite strong, but I trust cotton laces a million times more. I mean, there's not much to say, honestly. Their newest runs are really good boots. And I mean, I own a pair of Fredericki's, and I mean, I wouldn't say the quality is the same, but the quality is very close when it comes down to it. I'd say the Nestofs are a bit more purpose over prettiness sort of thing, because I mean, the toe plates are a little bit more incorrect to the wartime style. I'll actually just grab my Fredericki's here, which I haven't taken to an event yet, but this is the more wartime style on there. This is more, I wouldn't say a private purchase style, but this style during the war is a bit more rarer. My only gripe with these is that the wooden pegs are a bit sparse. I mean, on the Fredericki's you'd have 2 or even 3 rows, but these is only a single row, but it's not, I mean, they haven't fallen apart or anything. And I mostly use these for display events, you know, where you're mostly just walking around, talking to the public, etc. But I have used these at multiple events, even tactical events and whatnot, and they have held up surprisingly well, you know, compared to the reviews that are left online. Another thing I do really, really, really like about the Nestofs is because I've got quite a weird shaped heel, is that this bit where it comes out and sort of like a bubble around your heel. I really love that, because I've owned other boots that are cut straight like that and they kill my heel. So one thing I do applaud Nestof is actually using a correct shoe last, which is a shoe mold essentially. And they do have the correct sort of shark nose look where it tapers in and it's not a big, you know, sort of bubble. And they did exist during the war, but they were quite rare, that, you know, it's sort of like a structured toe, and these are very unstructured, and the leather is quite nice, I must admit. The leather used on these Nestof ankle boots is a good vegetable tanned leather. It's not chrome tanned or anything. They do take a polish really well if you want to be one of those fancy people and shine up their boots. I don't really do it with these because, oh shit, I checked the camera there. But yeah, anyway, like I was saying, I don't really polish boots like this, you know, that I'm wearing out in the field constantly. I do have a pair of sort of German dress boots that I got through a friend and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about them. They're really nicely made. They're actually decently comfortable compared to my other reenactment boots. There's actually a few instances where I've been sort of shouted at by my mother, where I'm wearing these around the house, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you're scratching the tiles and whatnot." So, but these are quite comfortable. They're decently warm as well. Usually you hear in accounts like soldiers in Stalingrad that remove the hobnails because the cold would draw through the soles and the hobnails and whatnot. Now I do wear inner soles, so it could be a bit of a difference there, but with these, when I took them to that immersion event, it was actually a rather cold weekend, and being South Africa, we're mostly wearing, you know, Africa Corps uniforms and tropical uniforms and so on. And, at that particular event, I was like, let me use my wool uniform and whatnot. And these were surprisingly warm. I've had issues with my really crappy Soldier of Fortune boots, which I'll probably do another video comparing qualities of boots. But anyways, with my Soldier of Fortune boots, I freeze my toes off with those. They're absolutely horrible. I mean, I have used them a lot longer than these, but still. There's not much to really say. Nestof did make a sort of a choice with these of making the tongue a pigskin, which I have seen originals using pigskin on certain parts, like especially officer boots with pigskin linings. And honestly, I prefer it because pigskin breathes a lot better than, normal cowhide. And the tongue is the only thing that's pigskin. So, it's sort of a good choice from a boot making perspective, because I have, like I said earlier in the video, I have sort of dabbled in cobbling. But yeah, overall, these are actually pretty good boots. And for the price you pay, it's worth it in my opinion. And one thing I can say is that Nestof actually did Blake stitch these. Blake stitching is sort of the way World War II German footwear was made, and even First World War German, which is essentially you don't have a separate strip of leather sewing the upper to the sole. It's basically just the upper is tucked under and then stitched directly through the sole, which you can see here and whatnot. These are actually well made. They don't use a natural thread for stitching on the sole, which honestly, in my opinion, with a bit of a reenactment experience and just being a boot nerd, nowadays, especially with hundreds of leather products doing all sorts of things, I do prefer the synthetic stitching on the sole and whatnot, because I have heard a bit of sort of rumors and whatnot, especially with dubbin, that it eats stitching and rots the stitching and whatnot. But I haven't had any issues, so I'm not going to go out there and preach something that I don't know about. But honestly, in this day and age, there's so many options, like especially knees footwear. This stuff is really good for the Nestof boots. These things are incredibly supple and whatnot, and the ankle support is still decent. You'd expect if you made a leather a little bit too soft that it would, not provide as good of an ankle support. But these, the area where we held that immersion event, you'd need, Gebirgsjäger boots, and these have held up really well. If I can figure out how to edit this video, I'll probably edit in a few pictures from that immersion event. But these are, to be honest, they're more like workhorses, In my books, owning Fredericki's and whatnot is, I wouldn't say bragging rights, but it's sort of like the creme de la creme. You're the posh kid on the block, but the sort of the mid-range quality of boots is quite accurate for wartime reproductions. And these do match wartime reproduction, wartime originals, because a good collector friend of mine has a pair of original M37s, and we actually compared the quality, and it's give or take the same. There are things on the Nestofs that you can obviously tell it's reproduction and whatnot, because the eyelets are a bit of a normal eyelet compared to the wartime versions. But you do see this type in during the war. It's just usually made of steel. This is made of sort of like a copper, I'd say. They're not going to break or anything, but it's sort of an area where there's not a lot of stress. There is stress, but it's not going to be, that you got to actually be worried about it. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, I don't know, subscribe, like. I'm not too fussy with that. I'm doing this more for the love of the hobby and whatnot, but oh well, have a good one.